will ready. Okay, started broadcast. Great.
Good. I am now in. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Let's begin our session. You are welcome on panel discussion, ways of thinking about the future. Let's begin our session about the future. And I'd like to introduce you our speakers, Frode Hegland, co-founder of the liquid information company, and Dmitry Sudakov, the co-founder and the director of the Atlas of Emerging Jobs and experts in the jobs of the future. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Anna Titova, and my colleague Anastasia Starostinskaya. We are working in the Kruzhok Movement. It's the organization in Moscow, Russia, and we worked with the national engineering teams among school children and students. So our school children and students, they are technical enthusiasts and future entrepreneurship, and so on. One of our goals is teach them about strategic thinking and give them methods to thinking about the future. And with this goal, we'll start our new initiative, is the Club of the Thinking About the Future, when we collect our methods, when we can provide to adolescents in the Kruzhok movement. It's like an object. Within this object, we increase our community, and our community from experts and school children, students who are interested in the desirable future and the positive way of for development of technologies and engineering school in Russia. So today's theme for our speakers, it's ways of thinking about the future, and we are waiting for interesting cases and his vision of ways of thinking about the future. And it's especially interesting that there are different spheres in which they worked. So it's ecosystems, HR and future jobs, and the future of text and the future of communication. So I hope it will be enriched discussion and inspiring for us and for our viewers too. Okay. We will have this discussion for 2 hours, and now we begin from the introducing of speakers, Frode Hegland, Pavel Luksha, and Dmitry Sudakov. The speakers have near 7 to 10 minutes, and after that we will go to the open conversation or open dialogue with all who are now in the Zoom, and actually we're waiting the questions from the YouTube viewers, so on. Okay, thank you. Let's start, and I give the floor to the Frode Hegland. Let's begin.
Hello. Nice to be here virtually with with all of you. Oh, can I please have screen sharing? Let's see now. Just to make it a bit easier to go through.
Yeah, just 1 second, and I will give it to all the speakers.
Sure, sure. Yeah,
got it.
Now the button changed to green. Right. So just jump right in. So the future will be multidimensional. Hang on, I'm going to move you guys. I have the Zoom window, and you guys are on the left, so I couldn't see what I was reading, which is what I was writing. Right. It'll be multidimensional, richly interactive, those are the nice hype words, but it will also be owned. I'm a bit of an Apple fan, but Apple is going to try to own VR in the future, technologically speaking. Meta is trying to own the future. Google is trying to own the future. Our job is partly to make sure that we co-own the future. Mac and Windows was a big problem. Microsoft Office was an issue, but in the future with VR and other technologies, it will be much more impinging on our lives. Oh, sorry that you guys are so big. I'm going to reduce you in size. Here we go. So I'll introduce what we're working on. VR, future, technologically speaking. Meta is trying to own the future. Google is trying to own the future. Our job. I'm getting quite a bit of feedback. Co-own the future. Mac and Windows was a big problem. Microsoft Office was an issue.
That now we hear a broadcast on YouTube.
Just
if you have to, yes,
just mute.
Turn off YouTube, please.
Okay. So no, okay, that's good. So no one can, excellent, all right. So the thing we're working on, we call visual meta. The problem addressed is documents, particularly published documents such as academic PDFs, lack access to digital affordances beyond the web link. So our aim is to give such documents metadata to enable rich interaction, flexible views, and easy citing in a robust way. Our approach is just to add a few words to the back of a document. So when we talk about metadata, this is what we mean, the kind of stuff you'll find on one of the first pages of a book. It's essentially how to cite the documents. For PDF, you can have it, but hardly ever does it happen. So what we've done is just taken that and using the example of last year's ACM Hypertext Conference proceedings, put it at the back of the document. For those of you who are familiar with academic standards, this looks like BibTeX, which is a part of LaTeX. And this bit here is actual BibTeX. It is the stuff that you would normally use in an academic setting to do citations. I'm highlighting a little bit of text here to show what it really does. Author equals, you have the names, title equals, you have the title, year equals. It's very human readable. It's based on wrappers. There's a start and end tag, visual meta start, visual meta end. Inside that, there's one in the header saying, this is the version and so on, self-citation you just saw. And this bit, I just want to repeat, is actually BibTeX. It is just normal stuff that can be copied from the academic page. At the top of visual meta, we have introductory texts. This is meant to be readable in a year or 500 years by someone who comes across a document like this. And it says in plain language, this is what it is, and this is how you can use it. So ACM Hypertext, they use the mandatory stuff, but there's also fun optional stuff. This includes the document type. That can have many different variables. I'm not going to go into a lot of technical stuff now because I think that would bore you all to pieces. Author details, simple things like first name, last name, and because I'm so lucky to be with many Russians today, Russian writing is very different from Western writing or Chinese writing. So you can have all of those types of writing in there for the author names. It includes all the references that this particular document has, what it cites. It also includes all the headings, which means it has the structural information about the organization of the documents. It can include a glossary, endnotes, and so on. So if we collapse the visual meta, we can actually put a few things external to the visual meta on separate pages. Remember, visual meta is an appendix at the back of the document. It's literally extra pages made. So before the visual meta, we can have content hash to verify what the document is. But more interestingly, we can have errata. If there's a mistake in the document, put an extra sheet saying what it is without deleting the whole document. Therefore, you have a bit more understanding of how the document has changed. History, who has read the document, approved it, and so on. And then finally, augmented views, which I'll get to in a minute. Here's one of the current implementations. You copy text, just Command-C, Control-C, copy from a PDF, paste it in the word processor, and it pastes it as a complete citation, not just plain text. Because what it actually does when you copy, it copies the whole visual meta and the selected text in a field called quotes. So that's the basic logic. We have a piece of software called Author. which produces a PDF with visual meta, and we have a piece of software called Reader that reads it. It's a completely open system. It's been implemented elsewhere, but we figured we should have a proof of concept as well. So I showed you the copy as citation. I'll briefly now show clicking on citations and so on. You can just click on the number citation or endnote in the document to see the full information. You can fold the document into a table of contents, and you can select any text and choose to see all the occurrences of that text in the document. These are the kind of rich interactions that normally you cannot do with a PDF, because a PDF is a flat document. And I'll now show you something that you might find more interesting. It's how to define and build definitions and connections. For instance, the musical Hamilton, just write what that is. Let's go into a map view. And here we will also write the word Hamilton. And if you now click on my name, there will be a line automatically to Hamilton. That is because I have written in my definition, amongst other things, I'm a fan of Hamilton. Hamilton doesn't have me, so there's only a faint line indicating that you should click on my name. Here you can see it's just plain text, so you're intentionally expressing relationships. This is what happens if you select everything. It becomes really messy. That's why it's so important that you select the pieces you're interested in. Export to PDF. And now, if you select text, I'm going to see all the occurrences of a term, like we did a little earlier. What happens is you get the glossary definition at the top of the screen. If the glossary definition contains another term, you can click to jump to it. It may be confusing that I'm talking about concepts and glossary definitions. It's the same thing, but the reason we use different names is generally when you read a document, what you have for definitions at the back is called a glossary rather than concepts. I would not mind feedback on what you think about that kind of language. This is the beginning of my PhD thesis. My thesis is on visual meta. So this is real. This is what it looks like. There's the paragraph or pilcrow symbol that I've used instead of having line breaks, because otherwise it takes too much space. Other implementations include this system by Adam and Mark, where you can see citation trees, because a document that has visual meta, the system can trust that it cleanly knows what it is, who it cites. So in closing, the benefits. You saw the advanced interactions, even though it's a flat, normal document. You saw the augmented citing, copy and paste, and it's a full citation. We can also have computational text, including maths equations. You can click and change. Servers can read what's going on inside the documents. And it's very extensible. Anybody can write such and such equals such and such. So if you need it for your own work, you can add it. Furthermore, it works on other media, not just PDF, also .doc, and it has been implemented in WordPress as a plugin. Select text, a little dot comes up, point to it, and you can choose to copy as BibTeX. And it copies as BibTeX, including the author name and title, because that's available in WordPress, plus the selected text will be in the quote field. And I think more excitingly, we are working on VR and AR. So we want to be able to work on our traditional computer screens, go into a VR space, take that data into the space, manipulate it, do whatever we need to do, share it, and then put it back out. Currently, this is not really possible if you're in a shared space, but we think that the way it can happen is the VR space needs to read the visual meta to have the rich understanding of the document, because there's no point with a flat piece of paper in VR. And when it's done, when you're done with the session, all the locations, all the information about all the notes is stored in the augmented view added appendix at the back of the document. So every time you save the document, it'll add a page with that. So you have a history of all the different rich views you've had. And the very end, it's solidity. It has to be solid. It's legacy safe because it's just text at the back of a PDF, nothing hidden, any kind of data structure. That means it's so robust, it can be printed. And then in the future, if you want, you can scan it, run OCR, and you've lost absolutely no metadata. So going back to the aim from one of the first slides, It does enable rich interaction, flexible views, and easy citing in a robust way. This is hopefully so that we can help own some of our rich future. So there are many ways we can talk about the future, but I thought I'd present the most specific thing we're working on rather generalities. Thank you very much for your time.
Frode, thank you. And please, can you tell us about how your product influenced to the future of text, and what do you think about the future of communication in this way too?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to have Doug Engelbart as my mentor. And for some of you, you may know Doug, he basically invented interactive computing. But he didn't feel that we really delivered. He feels it became almost like toys, what we have. And I have felt that stress for a very long time, and it's kind of subsided. I finally got my PhD, and I'm 53, so I'm not a teenager with a PhD. Decided to do it at this time of life. But then when I handed it in December, I decided, okay, my brain now can go a little looser. So I've hosted the Future of Text Symposium for 10 years. I've published the Future of Text book with many, many wonderful contributions. We've had 2 volumes, the third one's coming out this year. So I decided to think broader. And we have a community that meets every Monday and Friday. One of the guys there, he works in VR. And I just decided to try it, put the headset on. And now my absolute huge stress is VR will invade our worlds much faster than the smartphone. And the problem, and the reason it's a stress, is games, no problem, that's being worked on. Meeting rooms that are fancy, no problem. Right before I saw you guys today, I had a meeting in the normal Meta workroom. It's fantastic. The sense of presence is brilliant. A lot of things we can do. But what is missing is work in VR. Not just the software, but also the idea that we can work in VR. The opportunities are ridiculously immense. The current Oculus is okay. It's cheap-ish for what it is, still quite a bit of money. But Apple will come out with theirs in about a year. And we all know that Apple, one of the things they do is make things consumer-friendly. People will be able to pick up an Apple headset and just be there, and it'll just work. And the fidelity will be higher. We know that. So what we talked about yesterday, Anna, is something really worth highlighting. When you had Mac Write and then Microsoft Word, people thought they knew what text on a computer could be. There has been no innovation in text since the 80s except for the web link, none. I will arm wrestle you guys over that point. Now we're at a similar point. If we as a community don't build really exciting demonstrations of what really working in VR in a rich environment can be, the public's imagination will be completely stunted. And we will end up with horribly weak implementations. But if we manage to dream really, really far and deep and show what it can be, then, I am a small developer. Nobody here owns Google in this group, right? But then Google and Facebook and Apple, they will have to deliver what we want. But so far, we don't know what we want. And we have to work hard to dream, to make that clear that we dream high.
Frode, thank you. If I understand right, your bet to the future, it's VR and AR and more interactive work with text and new opportunities to our life and work too in this sphere.
Yeah, absolutely. The future is multifaceted, and I think we're going to need so many things to make a better future, no question. But I do think that over the last 5,000 years or so, the way we've developed text, meaning symbols with grammar, to help augment our thinking is so powerful. We should not throw away text. Of course, images and video and audio, of course, all of that's important too. But text is kind of boring and ignored. So along the many other things we need to do, how are we going to solve environmental issues if we can't even communicate clearly? And that's not just going to be people just talking. So yes, there are many things we need to do, and this is one little angle.
Thank you. Thank you, Pavel. Please.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Thank you for your presentation. And I think that actually, if I understand correctly, your approach, Frode, it's about also prototyping to a great deal. It's to discover and to learn what is, you're focusing on the future of text as a particular subject that interests you, but you show in the model of how we are not only imagining the future and encouraging others to create it, but really go there and really learn how to make, let's say, something as a kind of solution, which then, as you suggest, could be escalated by other players, for example, by the major players such as Google or Apple. And I think that nicely connects us to the topic that I wanted to speak about, which is what I call the Protopian approach. And if I may also demonstrate my screen, I do have right to demonstrate it just a moment. So I wanted to talk about parts of our work related to future visioning, but also to future prototyping. And if we first of all talk about like what normally people mean when they talk about working with future, it is usually, let's say, scientifically founded methods of imagining the future of different kinds. So if you look at this so-called futurology diamond that was created by a guy, I think his name is John Popper. So he highlights about like 30 or 40 different methods, including science fiction, simulations, backcasting, road mapping, and so on. So there are lots and lots of these methods, and all of them are about imagining in our mind the possible vision of the future. And I think that is really important. That has been the foundation of our work. And I hope that my colleague Dmitry is going to speak about the Atlas of Emerging Jobs, which has been one of our highlights in the area of skills. But we've been also working on different methodologies, primarily centered around what we call rapid foresight methodology. And why I think rapid foresight methodology is important is because the way we do this foresight doesn't stop with the vision creation. It is the first step into, let's say, the society mobilization, which then moves into different kinds of projects, experiments, prototypes, technologies. So actually working with future only, we can claim that we work with future only if we see the actual change that comes out of our, let's say, impetus, our desire to work with future. If we don't see the consequences of our desire to work with future, we are only fantasizing. It is an exercise similar to science fiction, which can also be catalytic sometimes for changing the direction of how our future society is created. For example, if we think about great science fiction writers or great science fiction movies such as Star Trek, of course it inspired a lot of actual technologies to create specific solutions, including many digital solutions, including remote communications and trying to create teleport technology and so on. So creating of the future and working with future, in my mind, is a connection between multiple spheres, one of which, of course, is vision building, the other one is community mobilization, and different ways of bringing future into reality through prototypes, through technological prototypes, events and activities and social projects that can create like attraction for new norms, new ways of working together. And I think this was the idea of many approaches, many projects that we did in the last decade, including I think what Kruzhok Movement tries to do for Russia and the world. And this is what I call the Protopian approach. The Protopian approach is trying to understand, exactly like Frode said, it's trying to understand what actually do we want. Like if we don't know what we want, anything is possible. It's the same as Alice in the Wonderland. If you don't know where you're going, you can go anywhere. All roads are good. But once you start to imagine the future you want to see, imagine the future you desire, you can mobilize yourself and others to move in that direction. So that future anticipation becomes also the way of mobilizing ourselves to step into that direction of future evolution. And so this is what we call the approach of Protopia. So as you know, there is this notion of utopia, the idealized image of the future. Dystopia is something we don't want, the negative image of the future, like 1984 or Terminator or many other like dark scenarios. Or myopia is the third opportunity. Like, don't talk about the future, only focus on present problems. We have so many immediate problems that block us from going to the future. All of them, unfortunately, do not offer us pathways into mobilizing ourselves for long-term action. And of course, what suffers anything that has to do with these long-term processes, including future of our children, our own long-term well-being, and let's say our relationship with our planet, ecological problems, all come out of this myopic or utopian ideas that don't take into consideration what is really happening and how we build up this relationship with the reality. So in the Protopian approach that we advocate, we need to prototype and amplify the potential of projects, ecosystems, successful prototypes, and connect them with each other. It's really important that we cannot create future alone. It's all about mobilizing multiple players that work in collaboration with each other, co-creating the future. And once we start to see each other as parts of this solution to the existing problem, we start to build ourselves into a collective movement. And by the way, tomorrow we are in this Learning Planet event are speaking about the what we call collective intelligence for Learning Planet. It is all about how to learn to be the nodes of this global brain, the part of the large ecosystem that addresses global challenges. And in that regard, to shape the long-term future, we also need the image of the long-term future, because anything that can, let's say, help us escape from the traps of the present dystopian scenarios are inspirational but achievable long-term visions. And I think this is the time now in 2020s is the right time exactly to reimagine what can be the pathway into the future for our society. And this is what we've been working on for the past several years, especially last year when we tried to look into really long-term future scenarios with what we call 100 years foresight. It's going to be presented in English in just 3 weeks from now in Expo in Dubai. And why we need conversations like this? Because really the 21st century is going to be much more different from the present reality than probably was the beginning of the 20th century from the middle and the end of 20th century, because a lot of forces in play are reshaping our society, reimagining. It's technological, but also social, changing social norms, changing models of economy. They all are redefining how we can look at our reality. And COVID, of course, was very catalytic and bringing about that change. It is catalytic in negative sense because it really revealed the fragility of our society. It started to reveal so many crises, economic, political, military conflicts coming up and so on. But it also highlighted that institutions of the 20th century don't work anymore for the present reality. We have to reinvent all of them. And that's what very actively starts to happen. And so to reinvent these institutions, we really need to understand why we need to reinvent them. And it's all about the fact that we are not able to cope with massive crises ahead of us. These crises are intertwined. When we talk about climate crisis, it's also a crisis of relationship in our society, in our economy, the fact how we understand the justice, who is poor, who is rich, why let's say the income is distributed this way, why power is distributed in this way in our society. And so that we are facing a mess of interconnected problems, including environmental, political, and even knowledge related. And I think this is why Frode's work is so important. He's trying to actually resolve one of fundamental things: is how do we work with our human knowledge very complex human knowledge that needs to be organized for 21st century in different ways. These are all interconnected problems, and to find the solution, we have to understand that we really need to look into how we understand reality and what are our priorities. Because ahead of us, if we kind of look at all these crises, they are turning into this kind of wave of risks ahead of us in the next, let's say, several decades. That's going to basically absorb us, maybe destroy the whole civilization and the whole species. The risks are really elevating, they're escalating. So the risk is that we are going to lose everything that has been accumulated over the hundreds, if not thousands of years of humanity. So we are right now facing what some people call evolutionary crisis. And evolutionary crisis was, the notion of evolutionary crisis was suggested by Margaret Mead already 50 years ago. But I think it's becoming more and more evident that we are here. It is a crisis that risks the very foundation of our existence, but we have to deal with something, to do something about it. And this is why the middle of this century, next several decades, are so critical. It is because we are entering into a phase when we either change our civilization, move to the new paradigm, or essentially lose it all. And I think it's not about just like finding multiple little solutions. It's all about realizing that we are all in the same boat in this situation. So moving ahead, we see that there is the good news is that there are scenarios, what we call evolutionary attractors, that bring us to the next level of complexity, that help us resolve all these problems. And we have all the cards that are necessary to play this game. We do not need to invent something else, really. We need to reinvent the principles of our living, not technologies. We need to reinvent models of our economy, models of our governance, and elevate new values that help us work and live in peace and work towards regeneration of our planet and our culture. And that connects also to the work that our colleagues at Kruzhok Movement are doing, I think, because the idea is that we need to start highlighting, escalating practices that bring that possible future into being here and now. This is exactly what we call the Protopian approach. Rather than waiting for the future and trying to build towards it, we need to do these little things that already model the future in the present right here and now. That's what we call Protopian approach. And that is done when we connect many players that are working on different solutions together. And the work of Almanac of Practices of the Future is one of approaches that does this. They highlight different communities and start to connect them. Start to see if we can create what we call lab of labs, the connection between different players working together towards the same inspirational long-term future. And I think what we need right now, there are some projects that I and my colleagues are working on, is first of all, we need to work on one hand top-down, but also bottom-up. Top-down, we need to mobilize more and more visionaries to really think long-term and to think about like what is the let's say most inspirational target for the next 100 years. What is it? If the world's top visionaries begin talking about it, this starts to pull situation in the desired direction. But we also need to understand that future is co-created. So the more people contribute to the vision, the more it becomes a massive movement, the better. So it brings us to the question of creating system prototypes, like learning ecosystems, movements like Learning Planet that are mobilizing us towards that action. Last but not least, it's about how do we lead better? So which means how do we actually implement these ideas? And we need to learn to become what we call evolutionary leaders. People that are not only build the future for others, but model themselves, model their change to be the system they want to see in the world. And we're going to talk about this on Friday in a session dedicated to evolutionary leadership. Thank you very much, and I hope for an interesting discussion now. Thank you.
Pavel, thank you a lot. Really very interesting global method. And Dmitry, go forward.
Okay, thank you again, Pavel. It's a pleasure as usual. Okay, I will start my demonstration.
So the project I'm working on is actually, well, it was started by Pavel, like many things in our life. And it's called the Atlas of Emerging Jobs. And it's like, mostly it's a book about the future of work. So it started in 2014 from the, well, idea to look like 20, 25, 30 years ahead and think about how the future can look like in terms of what we will do in that future. And like the method behind the this approach was based on rapid foresight mentioned by Pavel, modified a building called Skills Technology Foresight. It was verified together with ILO, and with 2 international projects in Armenia and Vietnam. Then it was implemented in several other countries like Tanzania, South Africa, Tunisia, and so on. So the whole idea again that like we have very little time. Well, when we started this work in Russia, we had very little time to conduct all these expensive existing approaches. So we started to move very rapidly, and the Skills Technology Foresight is mostly important. It's the participatory method. So we invite different stakeholders and start to build a dialogue about the future, discussing how the future of medicine, future of transportation, future of, I don't know, space can look like. And then we try to build this vision and understand what people will do in this, well, in this future. So we take like this huge pie of the economy, like sector by sector, and describe them. So I will skip that. Our approach towards the change of occupation is the idea to look on 3 levels, starting from the exact workplace, when the worker has some tools, implement them to materials in order to receive a product or a service. So it can be a barber or welder or consultant, it doesn't matter. On the second level, there's the system of workplaces where these donation, management, logistics, finance, law appear. And on the third level, this system of workplaces, or it can be an enterprise, exists in the external environment with clients who say, we want that kind of product, and regulators who regulate this their activity. And on this 3-level system, the technological, social, and other trends influencing, and they can change everything. So they can change the tools the worker works with, it changes the material, even the product, because today's milling machine operators, his product or her product isn't an exact piece which is created by the machine, but mostly the program. So it's more likely a programmer. So he needs to be, or she needs to be trained other way. It can change the system of workplaces, how we organize, manage the environment. So we, from understanding how this picture is changing, we can understand what kind of new jobs appear. Some jobs become redundant, and mostly the jobs are changing. So we can catch the idea of what kind of skills we need in the future. So, but I think the most important thing I want to say is actually that in the beginning of this work, we were, well, driven by the idea that we can understand what kind of, well, future jobs we need, understand how we can train these people, today's youngsters, and, well, provide them good education in order for them to fit in that future. And I believe in 2015 in California, we discussed the idea of, well, maybe we can call it a startup, but it was an idea of some technological solution which can like help the young person to identify some sport in the future. I want to be this like future, I don't know, space tourism manager, whatever. And with the help of the application, it will provide him or her the pathway toward that future. But what we understood, well, quite rapidly, that it is not really possible, because future is very rapidly changing, and today we can see it very clearly. And the whole idea is that we cannot build this pathway towards the successful future for a person without his participation or her participation. And the thing is that we have a wrong, I would say, optic. Like we see the whole idea, the whole approach towards that, towards career. Well, I would say not in a good way, because actually what we saw, like for last, I think, like 3 or more hundreds years, the whole approach towards the identity building for the person was the building identity around the person's professional identity. So when we introduce ourselves, actually, it's very can be very clearly seen. Like we say, okay, I am Dmitry Sudakov, and I am, I don't know, a welder or teacher or engineer, and everybody does that. I am a consultant. I am, name what you want. So, and we think that that gives us an idea about who is this person I'm talking to. So, and after that, and the whole system of education was built around that. So we created these small pieces for the huge economic machines: welders, millers, cooks, and so on, engineers. And after that, we placed them to exact place in the economy, and then we saw that the need in soft skills. So it's like the upper levels. After that, there can happen some, like, I don't know, meta skills, dealing with this, I don't know, the picture of the world and so on. And why is why this model is not very suitable for even for today, but for the future is totally non-relevant, because actually everything is changing very very rapidly, and the person needs to reconstruct his or her identity, professional identity, I don't know, 7, 10, 20 times during his or her life. So we understand that for the future we need totally different model, where our identity is built about things that will exist with us like for 10 years or maybe for the whole life, what we call the existential skills or meta skills, such as our curiosity, or either we, I don't know, sprinters, and we can do some things very intensively and rapidly, or always tired. So we are running, we are able to run a marathon, and that's very different ways to, all of these people are needed in the economy and in the society, but still they're different. And it's hardly possible that they can change this, the existential skills very easily. Above that, there's a cross-contextual contextual skills, which are exactly what it said, that the skills which can be applied in different contexts. It's not only the idea of soft skills we are discussing every day, but also it's the idea about other not so obvious examples. For example, welders say that the best welders are retrained artists, and it's in the old model, in the old approach, it's not very understandable. Why is it so? But now we can see that welders and artists have many things in common. The same thing is about, I would think about the dentist. So, and after that, we build these context-specific skills, which can be welding, cooking, programming programming language, and so on and so on. So for me, the idea, we work a lot with schools because we understand the place where we need to implement mostly our efforts. That the idea is that we need to focus on these cross-contextual skills, and the person needs to understand what actually she is training while doing something, while writing an essay or making an experiment, I don't know, physical or chemical and so on. So what skills are trained? And after that, be ready for that future. So the Atlas, as I said, today is mainly a book, which is our, I would say, a statement about the future. So we say like in 2035, 2030, the world will look like that. We, and saying we, I mean like Kruzhok Movement, Global Education Futures, and many other colleagues working on that future. We are building that future. We are trying to create it. So actually, exactly what Pavel called the Protopian approach. So today Atlas covers like 28 sectors of economy, very different from medicine to robotics, from space to education, from tourism to sports, and so on. And we described several hundred new professions. Atlas is a Atlas. There are some things I think worth mentioning. That actually, first of all, the content of the Atlas was created during, I believe, more than 100 these rapid foresight skills technology foresight sessions in these sectors. Secondly, the Atlas as a product was created using the like this collaborating financing. It was like a project fundraising on the one of the platforms. So hundreds of people supported it. So like thousands of experts participated in this, in creating all these products. So actually, it's a book. It's available in English as well for free. I think it can be downloaded from the website, and in Russian it is available as a paper book as well, and I believe it exists on Amazon, but I don't know about the paper version. So but more than that, actually we are focusing about it. It's like, as I said, it's our statement about the future, but today our key activity is to implement, to introduce this solution to schools in order to change the ways like people are teaching young people, and to in a sense rebuild the education system and educational approach. So we created several games in order to help teachers to introduce all these things to young children. We understand that the family is very important in this, so we encourage families to discuss this future about the changing jobs and so on and so on. So I love the thing Frode said about the owning of the future. And for me, one of the key challenges is that today people mostly live in the idea that future belongs to someone else. It can be a government or Google or Facebook or whatever. I don't know, to China government, for example, called myopia. They just refuse to think about the future. They don't know that they can think about the future because they're too small. And for me, the idea of creating these communities with their voice is very important, and seems very very strong idea, and for me it's the only way to as I said in the beginning of our meeting, I'm quite pessimistic about the future, because if the things continue to go the way they're doing, well, I'm really doubtful about the humanity will see like the 23rd century, or maybe even 22nd. But if we change this, like the approach, if we raise this society, calling them to arms, that I think it's the only way to do something, with the help of Frode's approaches to communication, with help of what Pavel is doing in, I don't know, Dubai, in Russia, not only in Russia. And we can see that today, like it's Atlas, again, it's like a family of products, it's family of different statements. So we started our work on creating regional versions of Atlas for different regions, because Russia is huge. And it's very different, like from Far East regions are totally different from the southern regions or Arctic regions and so on. So there are like, I believe today it's about like 5 regional versions of Atlas. And for me, again, it's the instrument for the region to build their own identity. Like we are thinking about the future, and the future in our region is, well, is looking that way. So it's that's what they can say to the young people in order to help them to stay to the region, to attract other people there, and so on. We started to create international atlases, like in 2020, there was a Kazakhstan version. It's very different from what we're doing in Russia, but still the methods, their approach, we taught them how to do this foresight session. So they created their version of Atlas, and we are discussing some other international stories with that. So again, for me, the idea is that what, in a sense, what we are doing is inspiring people to dream about the future, to be brave enough to build the way to the future. And I really loved the like in the end, I would say that I really loved the things that was said, like a feedback for me. Like on one of the meeting with young people, I said that the problem is, for me, the problem is that the young people, like they forgot how to dream. And for us, Atlas is the way to inspire them to dream more, to think differently from what today is looking. So that's it. And well, I think I'm in time.
Dmitry, thank you. Great. It was a very interesting hexagon scheme. And we have questions from YouTube audience. And now I propose to finish the part of introducing with the introduce of my colleague Anastasia Starostinskaya, community manager and the head of the project Almanac of the Practices of the Future in the Kruzhok Movement.
Thank you, Anna. And thanks a lot for organizing this discussion. And also want to thank Learning Planet and the festival they're organizing right now, because it's an opportunity to hear different voices from different countries. And today in the morning, we had a game about different visions of the future in English, and there were different positions. And now, though, all the 3 speakers were actually talking about, well, quite similar attitude to the future. I also found some differences there. for example, as I understood, and it will be interesting for me if you also react somehow on how I understood you. So if I'm correct or incorrect, you can text it or then say. So Pavel was focusing on the global future that will be different from the present anyway, because we have a lot of problems right now in the present, and it should be different. But we as the humanity, we can choose not to let it happen as it will happen, but to go to the desired vision of the future. And for that, we need to get this global image of the future that we desire as the humanity. On the other hand, Dmitry was focusing more on the individual way of getting to the future. And as I understood, it's the way of training oneself to become the person of the future, the human of the future. And this will be the way the future will become the desired one. The future and social systems will be changed not by changing these systems itself, but by changing every person who wants to become not the human of the present, but the human of the future, with new skills, with new education, and with new attitude towards the world. And at the same time, Frode was focusing on the different possibilities that are in the present. And yeah, I also like the idea about owning the future by like the mainstream that usually ignores a lot of different possibilities in the future, such as, for example, working in the VR. And so in such approach, the future it can be changed by different concrete and special practices in which you don't go just with the mainstream, but try to use the possibilities that you see in the present and that leads you like to the desired future, like a piece of a puzzle, a whole in the whole picture. And well, in those three attitudes, actually, we all need the image of the desired future. And this is really difficult to get. And that's why I have two questions for you that will help, I hope, those technological enthusiasts we're working with in the Kruzhok Movement. So we work with them, with school children and students who are keen on new technologies, because we really believe that they need to get their image of the desired future, because if they don't understand and if they don't think about the consequences of their engineering projects, then we will get just the future, just one of those variants of the future, and not all of them are positive. There are a lot of negative ones, and a lot of negative scenarios that are connected with technological, with the new technologies. And that's why it's really important for us that our youngsters, technological enthusiasts in the Kruzhok Movement, they think about the future and they have their own attitude to the future, their own position, and they have their own image. But if we, for example, look through science fiction books and films, yeah, usually we have an apocalypse there. Usually we have negative scenarios, and it's really easy for the humanity from through all the centuries to think about the negative scenarios of the future. So my question is, the first one is, what helps you to imagine the desired variant of the future? Not all of those negatives, but the desired one. And the second one is, what helps you to prototype to get into this desired one future? Because, and you also mentioned it today, and we have a lot of negative and depressive tendencies here in all the countries. And during the coronavirus epidemic, we also feel quite depressive, and it's really difficult to move to this desired future, not just go to the negative scenarios. So we'll be very happy if you answer me these two questions. So what helps you to imagine the desired future, and what helps you to prototype to get there? Does anyone want to answer?
Okay, I'll jump in.
Thank you.
I'm grateful for that framing. I think it's really, really good. So I was in the Norwegian military. I was in the infantry. I worked in NATO's big fancy base and everything. And this is obviously when I was quite young, and of course Russia right next door, big and scary. I imagined what's it called? The peninsula up north by the border. Just the name dropped out of my head. Murmansk. Yeah, sorry, especially Murmansk, the base, where you have your submarines and everything. And then I decided to go with my wife to Russia, and we went to Moscow, and it was amazing. But we also went to Murmansk. And it was really an interesting vision of the future because it was bright. It was really sunny, first of all. My indoctrination of it being dark and gray, no. And all the children were wearing, and teenagers, very bright colored, cold clothes, right? But more than that, the McDonald's was the most modern McDonald's I've ever been to anywhere in the world. It's one of the first places to have, the automatic machine. And when we were sitting there, we had to try McDonald's in Murmansk, for crying out loud, weirdest thing in the world. And then one of the teenagers, after they were sitting there being tough, carried the rubbish across, something fell off, the kid picked it up and put it in the rubbish. I'm telling you the story because I think to have a good future, we need more travel. We need to find a way to offset the environmental costs, but people have to see other people. I had such a clear prejudice brought upon me, and it was just so funny almost to see the reality, and that goes again and again for different people. The future has to involve more human connection. I don't have anything else to say on that right now.
Yeah. Can I continue here? I feel that first of all, in terms of let's say being more responsible in what we do when we especially develop different technologies that are future oriented, requires some kind of, let's say, compass, some kind of guiding map where we can at least measure ourselves. Are we doing the right thing? So, for example, just to give one example of what comes out of Kruzhok Movement, there was a very controversial experiment a few years ago on the National Technological Initiative Olympic for young people teams, when several teams were working with cockroaches, and they created a device to control cockroaches remotely. So they basically used a neural interface which was implanted in cockroaches part of the neural system that controls their movements. So they created basically living robots. And I think it is on one hand, okay, it's an inspirational example of a very advanced technology that young people are working with. On the other hand, it really challenged a lot of people. Are we making living organisms into remotely controlled robots? And we can imagine all kinds of, let's say, unethical applications for this kind of technology. We can also imagine how this technology is brought from insects to mammals and even human beings, and this becomes quite nasty future scenario. Do we want to live in a future like this when, when pandemic started, a lot of people thought, okay, Bill Gates is using this vaccination to use nanobots to inject nanobots into our brains. Of course, it's all completely ridiculous because there is no such technology at the moment. But potentially there has been a lot of discussion, and Frode, you remember that we also were involved in this conversation about the prospects of neural technology for the future of communication, which can have all kind of very optimistic applications that will create a global brain, will allow us to understand each other remotely, to work much more efficiently together. But it can also be used in a very, let's say, despotic, tyrannic way to control global population and really turn humans into living robots. So few technology enthusiasts have responsibility, I would say, definitely. So the question is, where do we draw a borderline? And in universities around the world, we have ethics committees to challenge experimenters whether the new experiment they want to create stands several criteria. Among them, of course, whether it's legal, but also whether it will be seen as, let's say, ethical. Does it contribute to well-being of human population? Does it work for the benefit of the planet? I think for technological enthusiasts, we need some kind of self-governance, some kind of boards that will challenge which kind of technological avenues are better to explore, which should not be explored, or very cautiously be explored. And most important, what I think is important, is to cultivate some kind of inner understanding. For example, when we are working on new kind of technology or new kind of solution, and especially more encouraging young people to dedicate themselves several decades of their life to that, we should have something as a compass. And I think that compass is a universal well-being of individuals, communities, ecosystems, and planet as a whole. So if we think about, and there is a very beautiful way of approaching this that exists in Aboriginal societies, which has the idea to measure every important decision from the perspective of seven generations. So 7 generations in the past, how would they see you? Like the ancestors of your ancestors, how would they see you? The descendants of your descendants, the grandchildren of your grandchildren, how would they see you when you are doing this thing? Do they say thank you for doing this, or will they be puzzled, or will they be like, why are you doing this at all, or will they let's say blame you for doing what you're doing? And I think if we measure ourselves, if we try to look ourselves in this very long time perspective, then we completely start to understand some of our actions don't make sense, even if we have nice grants for them, or if we have nice military contracts for them. We probably should not take them, because we're doing something that is completely against the long-term interests of our own children, of our children. So that's what I think is a long-term criteria that we should apply. Again, Protopian approach that I'm advocating for, it's all about like, I am the person responsible for the future. If I am the responsible, then my life, my children, my ancestors, like my grandfathers, they are seeing me in this process right now. They are witnessing me, and they're asking me, "Are you doing the right thing?" So that's how I see our perspective, especially technological enthusiasts.
Well, I see Frode has a hand, but maybe I can add something before. Returning to the question Anastasia asked, to me it seems there are like two things that can help to think about the future. The first one is a fear. Like we do remember that in the end of 19th century, people reading Malthus were frightened by the coming lack of food, and one of these believers was Russian inventor, scientist Tsiolkovsky, who decided that that's why we need to live on other planets, and that's how we started to explore space. And it was like launched by the fear. And we saw many different examples of that fear driving us to dream about the bright future. But I think, honestly, that it's not like the sustainable way to think about the future. It's not for everyone, because mostly people will just lay down and die. The other way for me is to be brave, actually. And that's exactly what we are talking about for the last years. Actually, me and Pavel were studying in one school, so I really think that the things that happened in that school, they formed both him and me exactly that way. We were not we were brave enough to ask questions, to create new things, and to dream. So the teachers were supporting us to do that kind of things, actually. So for me, the idea is like thinking about how to help young people, and Kruzhok Movement is for young people, how to help them to be dreamers, to think about this different future. It can be frightening, yes, it's true, and they need to understand that, but they need to be brave enough to think differently. So is to provoke them to make mistakes, to help them to learn on that mistakes, but they need to be brave, and that's I think my answer. Frode, you wanted to add something, I believe.
So many exciting points coming up. I added a little bit about the butterfly earlier there, because someone, I think it was even a post on Facebook, said that we all think that if we travel back in time, we shouldn't change anything because we can have a butterfly effect and have huge changes in the future. Why don't we think of that today? That things we do today can have huge changes in the future. So when I talk to younger people, I try to use that as a kind of mental example, because what you talk about, Dmitry, with fear, yes, spot on. Absolutely, completely, utterly. And then there's the other side of this is morality-wise, we've kind of gone from the tyranny of the king, one person arbitrarily ruling our lives, to now we have kind of a tyranny of the community, populist governments and so on. They're both scary and they're both arbitrary. So I honestly, truly need that if we're going to deal with these problems, we will actually need to enlist religion. And when I talk about religion, because obviously religion can be horrible, it can be the thing that gets everybody against each other. My son, he goes to a Jesuit school because it's a good school. I'd rather argue ethics in the evening than not be allowed to talk about ethics. So when we applied to this school, because my wife and I are not very religious, on the form of what religion are you, we put full Abrahamic tradition. And what we meant by that is Jewish, Christian, Islam. It is actually the same God. They're just 3 sects and many subsects within that. So we subscribe to that. So I have actually jokingly and also seriously created a new religion. And this new religion, it takes the Torah, the Old Testament, and the New Testament, and the Quran, glue them together very roughly, and then a yellow post-it on the back that says, be good in dialogue with others. Those 2 things seems to be what this community is about. We need to do good, but obviously what we think is good could very often not be good. So if we combine do good and in dialogue with others, I really think that has to be a way forward. Because technology is not neutral. Of course it isn't. Look at America with lots of guns. That is not a neutral thing. A gun is not neutral. I was in the military. I know what guns are for. But still, you need to have an emotional and ethical and religious and spiritual point of view to live your life. I think everybody here in this room, from what I've heard, are all about, let's be nice to each other. But being nice is complicated, right? Hence the dialogue.
Thank you, Frode. We have a question from our YouTube viewers. The one question to Dmitry, but I'd like to go first to Anastasia, and they're interested our channel, YouTube channel of the Kruzhok Movement, but not anyone knows what we should do in detail, and so. Anastasia, please tell more about what's the activity Kruzhok Movement do, and what's our bet of the future too, and what's the goal of the movement?
Well, it's a bit difficult to answer for the whole movement and for the whole community. No, but okay, to tell more about the Kruzhok Movement and our bet to the future. So the Kruzhok Movement is an over-Russia community of technological enthusiasts of different ages. We start with school children and also go to the students. And what we're trying to do is to connect them with the professionals from technological companies and universities that are dealing with new technologies and that are launching real projects right now that will shape the future socio-technological systems. And for that reason, we have different projects. One of the most important for us and one of the biggest one is the National Technological Olympiad. So these are competitions for school children in different spheres. And it happens every year and even help them to get into the universities. And so these are engineering competitions where they compete in teams and trying to solve real tasks from the technological business that they get. We also have the project schools where we try to deal with them with the essential problems of the present and to make some projects that will solve those problems and to make MVP for those projects and then to launch them further. And also, like one I think of the most interesting also projects is this almanac of the practices of the future. This one is what we started with Pavel Luksha several years ago, where we tried to gather different practices of the future from different countries all over the world. And there we got it onto the map, in the online map into the internet. And actually this is for us the place for experiments of how we can talk about the future with children and how we can go into the future with them and how to prototype, how to make projects. So the map of the practice of the future was one of the steps. A series of lectures with Pavel Luksha and such discussions as this one are also our experiments of how we can shape the thinking about the future with those technological enthusiasts. And this is our bet for the future. So we believe that children, the younger generation, they should be included into the prototyping of the future, but they shouldn't be alone there. They should be with the adults, and actually there should be connection between generations, and we should go there together. And this is what our projects are about. And also we can't just go somewhere, because then we will, as Alice find ourselves somewhere. We should firstly shape our thinking about the future, and then try to launch projects to prototype the future that is desired for us.
Okay, thank you. Yes, and we had another question to Dmitry. When you demonstrated him with different approach to the soft and hard skills, context skills, and like the dolls, and it was the question from our viewers, and which the role the play of socialization is the skills, and how you estimated a process of socialization in the during to increasing the hard and soft skills and the skills in use him too.
Oh, well, I'm afraid I didn't get the question right, but well, socialization skills for sure. For me, it's well, partly there. On the lowest level, talking about these existential things, because some of us are introverts, other extroverts, and so on. But mainly they are on this middle layer. Again, maybe some of these socialization skills can be on the upper level, but for me, they're mostly on this middle level, because it's exactly what helps us to communicate, to integrate to other cultures, to integrate to our culture, and so on. So for me, they're very important, and I really think that today there are lots of discussions about what is more important, hard skills or soft skills, all these cross-contextual skills. For me, honestly, well, there is no right answer for that kind of questions, because for sure, like some employers we're talking to say, no, today the most important are the soft skills, because everything, if a person has good soft skills, then he can be or she can be taught literally anything. Others say no. Today we understand that the world is so complex, so that we need these good specialists, and you cannot be a good engineer basing only on soft skills without understanding all these modern technologies and so on. Again, both of them right. And I have another like slide in my presentations when I talk about this, what is called 21st century skills, and the slide says reading, writing, and math. That's things you need to you wouldn't be successful in 21st century without them. You cannot do that. For sure, it's like a provocative slide, because it is true, but it looks very strange for today's people, and that's what we need to understand. That when we talk about 21st century skills, all these 4 R's on emotional intelligence and so on, we need to clearly understand one thing. We name them 21st century skills because it's the thing. It is the skills which are widely required in 21st century, and it is true. But another thing we need to keep in mind is that these skills, we don't know how to train, we don't know how to teach them, because actually we are good with reading, writing, and arithmetics. We know how to teach these skills. That's why they are not like skills of the future. Though tomorrow's person will, she just wouldn't be able to be successful in 21st century without reading, writing, and arithmetics. Still, we know how to teach them, how to train these skills, and that's why we don't call them the skills of 21st century. And we are very poor in how to train people to communicate with each other, how to be kind to each other, how to understand own borders of other people. So and that's the questions for like for everyone actually. And that's why some people say we in our like in our company we need people with soft skills. That means actually that they are lacking them. And when person says no, only hard skills, that means that they are good with soft skills, but they lack the hard skills. So for me, the idea is to the person need to, I don't know, you cannot constantly reflect on something, but from like quite frequently understand what set of skills you have today and what set of skills you want for tomorrow, and how you can build that next set of skills basing on your existing ones. But again, everything should start from myself, how I can do that together with other people. I would say that way.
Thank you, Frode.
Yeah, sorry, it's so important what Dmitry is talking about. And just a really, really small comment on a hugely important field. And my son, whom I love talking about, is 4.5. What we try to communicate to him is on this topic, just as one father to one son, it is, don't just listen to what the other person says. Try to understand what the other person means. Listen with your brain a little bit more. And just to see him on kind of playground settings where someone says something clearly stupid, for him not to react to that, but they want the ball actually, or what they really want to, whatever, stuff that we know. But I'm just trying to make it so simple for him. And similarly, when he's trying to communicate something, when he's trying to say something, when to be frustrated and when to not, it is really hard to write in a book how to do it, but in a dialogue with an actual child, it's more, why are you annoyed at your friend? What did your friend actually want? I think they are teachable skills, and I think they are crucial skills, because as technology will do more of our work, our human value will be more how we deal with other humans, not necessarily how we deal with technology. So the slide you had earlier, I think, is so wonderfully important to put it in different, your Russian dolls. I thought that was really, really nice.
Yes, it's very interesting. Dmitry, and you sent a message to the chat about the metaphor of butterfly.
Actually, it was Frode.
Yes.
His idea about
Yes.
that was a time traveler from the past, changing today. But what can be a butterfly for us for changing future?
It's beautiful. Okay. Thank you a lot. Alia, I see comments in the chat from you. Maybe you would like to introduce yourself and go to our discussion and join our discussion too.
Hello. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes. Great.
Yeah. Hello. I have a few words to say about maybe using the technology in the future, because I've been teaching English and science communication to master and postgraduate students. And what I noticed with the advent of Zoom communication is that the children are getting worse and worse education in the process, because we're still biological creatures. We're made of cells, and we all can see what just a virus can do to destroy us. And communicating via technology doesn't help human communication at all. It worsens it. And in my particular realm, like communication teaching, intercultural communication, language teaching, those neural path works, they work better when you are in the same room physically, and you are doing something with people face to face, namely like role play, or you compose a story or whatever. So what I've witnessed is just deterioration of education all over the place, I guess. So in a couple or 3 years' time, if it goes the same way, we will get, or like students will get worse education levels. I can for sure say that about my realm. I can't say anything about engineering or whatever other fields where people directly deal with technology. But if we're talking about language education or any humanities education, the technology is just stands in the way of what actually can happen and should happen while in face-to-face communication. That's kind of just my observation.
Pavel?
Can I comment? Yes.
Yes, of course.
Well, thank you for the observation, for your sharing. And I think we are, let's say, we have a more complex situation in terms of what is happening with level of education in general and how education evolves. I think that if we look at sectors of education that are least regulated by the government, that do not have any expectations from the society apart from, let's say, let's do it good, or if there are expectations for customers, consumers themselves, like for example in adult education or in very very early age education. I think there is very active development. I agree that on one hand you're absolutely right that we are biologically we are not fit for staying in let's say this remote communication for very long. It's unnatural, absolutely. But the potential of technologies, if we do it the right way, has a lot of advantage. Organizing sessions like this, connecting to experts that are living on the other side of the planet, learning things that you can learn a lot of things remotely. And I don't think that technology for education as such stands in the way. The problem comes when we try to put the new objectives into very old and outdated structure. The problem is, I think the biggest problem is with schools. The second biggest is with universities, because there is so much regulation and norms and processes that are cemented into the existing structure and curriculum and measurements of assessment, measurement of outcomes and compensation of teachers and norms for how you should do your profession, what is seen as good as not good, buildings, architecture of buildings, and so on. So everything there cements the old way of learning that was very suitable for the beginning of 19th century. Now in the 21st century, we need a completely different. If we had an opportunity, only if we had an opportunity to work without any regulation, like it used to be in the beginning of the 19th century, there were no regulation, it was all invented. If we didn't have any standards for how school building should look like, if we didn't have any textbooks that are already written and that try to be republished, if we don't have any ideas about how students have to be assessed and so on, if we all have like a blank field, we will probably create a totally different educational system today. And I think the technologies, we would use them the right way. The problem is that we have this old structure, old mentality of, first of all, the regulators. Second big problem are also parents who were taught 30, 40 years ago and now want their children to be taught the same way. Teachers that they were trained 20, 30 years ago, they replicate what they learn. back then. So all of them are not interested in changing their ways. But any place where we can have creativity, I see that technology is used the right way. There is a lot of innovation happening, and students are thriving. And when we talk about, for example, private schools, I'm not saying private school is the only right way to go, but I'm saying that because there is less regulation, people can experiment more, and they are doing environments for children where children thrive, when they flourish. And so I think the problem is not with technology. The problem is with institutions. The problem is with norms that are completely outdated, and we have to get rid of them and establish totally new objectives, to realize that in 21st century, objectives of education and norms for education have to be completely revised.
Can I answer to your comment?
Yes, of course.
Well, I was able to work quite creatively within the existing frame of regulations and with old buildings and using technology all the time. I'm not talking about not using the technology at all. I'm talking about using it wisely, but being in the same space with my students is the only thing I was talking about, because the 1st of September, what I had to do when we started Zoom communication, I had to simplify my whole course in science communication by like 200 degrees. That's what I'm saying. Instead of what my students had the previous year with science communication course, these students would have twice as bad. That's what I'm saying. With all the internet connection not working, with students having only audio, not video, with technology failing all the time, some students don't have good access to technology. That's what I'm saying. Not when I'm in the classroom. And regulations, believe me, are not that big a problem. And old buildings are not that big a problem, because when you are face to face, you're communicating with the student's brain directly. So this is what's happening. So I am not anti-technology. I'm anti-technology hogging the communication, which should be happening between two humans, or like group of humans.
Okay.
I completely agree. Let's say to end up this, I want to say I completely agree, and I think that part of the problem, big part of the problem, I wanted to show the slide. I didn't manage to find it, but the thing is that to thrive and to flourish in online learning, students have to acquire a completely different set of skills that like 90% of them don't have those skills. So they become much less efficient in totally new learning environment, because they don't have self-discipline, because they don't know how to organize themselves, because they don't know how to present in the online space. All of these things can be learned, but it takes time, and I completely understand that, and I agree that it is the case in most situations that the efficiency of learning drops many percent. Absolutely.
No. You are missing my point completely. Zoom, however skilled you become, is not a replacement for direct communication. That's what I'm saying. Technology stands here in the way. That's what I learned from my experience. I'm not making just some generic statements of the future of education in general. I'm speaking practically and very concretely from my own teaching experience and from the results that I'm getting from my students. So no amount of training or whatever or access will sort of compensate for the lack of face-to-face biological direct human communication. So I just want to make it
I'm not sure I can agree with you, because I have completely
there's another point. So
practical evidence that, from
right?
not only my
don't try to like.
Yeah, Alia, it's just my experience and my community experience against your community experience. I'm not saying that your experience is wrong, but I'm only telling you that there is a different experience. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, thank you, Alia. I suggest to ask another participants of discussion, Frode and Dmitry. I think that you have an answer too.
Okay, Frode turned off his camera, so maybe he will join us a bit later. I have several comments. First of all, to Pavel. The first thing I want to mention is that it's an easy way to say that we have bad institutes and we have bad buildings. Still, we are living with what we have. So we cannot just you could remember the story of like 100 years ago when some people say that we need to destroy the existing world and to build brave new one. And this controversial experiment ended in 1991. Well, showed it's not a sustainable way to do something. So it's not for me. It's about utopia, not protopia. So it's the first thing. The second thing regarding your comment on the blank space and totally different educational system and so on, and good examples of well, private schools, adult teaching and so on. For me, to be honest, and I need to be honest, and that kind of discussions, it sounds like a survivorship bias. So you see good examples and you do not know how many bad stories happen because they are just out of the scope. So and how we can identify all these good stories, how we can just multiply them and so on. So it's for me it's very difficult question. Frode is very right. And regarding the like this several last minutes hot discussion about whether online education can replace or cannot replace. For sure, we need to understand that the live education with the being present on in the same room and so on, it's just faster and it's more efficient. Still, we understand that in today's reality, when we are divided, we just we see lots of examples with this people who manage to get very good education online. That brilliant story about this Chinese guy who had his son with genetic disease and experimental drug in the United States, and he tried to order it, but because of the COVID, he couldn't do that. And he literally learned how to create the drug in his flat. So he went to Coursera, took some pharmaceutical courses, how to create drugs. He didn't know English, and he managed to translate everything with subtitles and so on, and he managed to create that. So he managed to buy some equipment to create this laboratory and that kind of things, just because he was motivated enough. So the idea for me is how in existing situation, how to raise this motivation of people, of young people, of elder people. It doesn't matter actually. So we need to understand how we can be in the world full of technologies who are trying to manage our attention. All these social networks, I don't know, TikTok, Facebook, name yourself, tag yourself. They're trying to just catch our attention to get money from that. So how can we create really motivated student, really motivated, I don't know, youngster to be successful in this environment? That's it. And I believe about the communication, there was a very important point, and I think it's like a Frode's zone.
There's so much wonderful discussion going on here. And, you know, the meeting I had before you guys, I was in BR. The meeting I'll have in a few minutes after this, it will be with Vint Cerf, the co-inventor of the internet. So I'm by no means against any kind of technology, and I don't think anyone here in the room is. But reading Esther Wojcicki's book, How to Raise Successful People, she's a wonderful woman, and her daughters have done phenomenally well. She gives a few interesting points. I highly recommend the book, How to Raise Successful People. And she says the most important thing children need is love. And you cannot be seen, you cannot be loved in, you know, Horizons Metaverse Rome. If you want to learn a specific fact, how to put together an engine, VR is fantastic. If you're purely intellectually meeting someone, all these things are fantastic. But as a teacher, Aliyah, if I pronounce your name right, I think your experience bears out the essential humanity. If you're not inspired, if you don't feel that you are seen, especially when you're young, why should you give up monkeys, right? You have to have ownership. We talked about ownership earlier. It has to be ownership, this too. You have to own your teacher. Your teacher has to own you. Being a teacher is a very intimate thing, right? Otherwise, you're just someone doing presentations. So, and knowing Pavel, even though I haven't seen you for a while enough and reading his comments here, I know he completely agrees with you. When it comes to inspiring the young, yes, be there in the room, but sometimes we can't do that, like the meeting we have today. So let's not make efficiency an excuse to cut away the time of the teacher. Absolutely. Yeah, it's just so nice to have these perspectives highlighted. Thank you.
Frode, thank you. I think that we need to sum up today's discussion, and that was really was a very interesting part about discussion of the digital education, and it's really not so simple, and have some questions, but it's about build new system and trying a new format of communication too, and it's about ethics for me, to each ethics for each other, and new principles of work too. And what do you see about develop of methods? What about the future of your methods, do you think? And what's the main thought of this discussion, today's discussion today you have? Okay, Frode, can we start from you, like in the beginning?
I'm sorry, I'm just having my lunch here in the background.
Okay. But I know that you have one new thought from today's meeting.
Well, the only new thought I have from this meeting is the way that Pavel emphasized the need for trying to build a future, but we have to do it together. You know, these communities that are trying to do this, that, and the other. So we have to try to find a way to communicate and share our learning and be strong together. I think that is just so incredibly important. And it's such a treat to sit here in South London on a very grey day and be communicating with all of you on this single thing we all care about the most, which is the future. So most of all, I'd like to say thank you.
Thank you, Pavel.
Well, I would like to conclude in the spirit of where we started, because this panel was about working with future, and I think the world is changing and will continue to change. And there are many drivers of this change, and like Dmitry said, he said that often people don't feel like future belongs to them because they can see that big things are shaped by forces they cannot control, like, okay, governments or big corporations just impose technologies or laws, for example, on them, and then they have to cope. Or governments start wars and they have to deal with it. But in the present reality, we also have potential to influence so many things. And I think if we are open to recognize that we are part of being the change, and our effort can impact that, if we are just open to learning new things continuously, then we will see a totally different future. If we try to resist and say this is not working and so on, then probably the result will be that we just become excluded, or we exclude others, and then that's a reason for war. Trying to prevent and present and stop, let's say, the change, rather than to learn how to guide the change. That's my takeaway.
Thank you, Dmitry.
First of all, I feel gratitude for this discussion, for the invitation, for meeting Frode, and that actually my key feeling at the moment. Talking about something new from this discussion, yes, it's not the first discussion of that kind, and I saw how Pavel was hesitant to find yet new words to add to that. I think, unfortunately, I believe that people in YouTube didn't see the discussion in a Zoom chat. There were really some important things about. So I got some very good metaphors regarding all this future talks, but for me it seems that the key thing for me, which was discussed today, is the story about I decided that I don't like the word own, or the story about that the future belongs to me. And honestly, I would suggest using in future, because actually what we are saying is actually programming what we are doing, to use something different like co-own or something like that. Like many people in condominiums, in Moscow, many condominiums, and people are living there, and it's very easy to and these condominiums has lots of like common spaces, like these entrance zones, places near elevators and that kind of things. And it's very easy to say when you come to a condominium, to one on another, whether people co-own it or whether these common spaces belong to no one. And it's very easy to say from the very beginning when you enter the building. So for me, the key idea is to co-own the future, just to not let it belong to a corporation or a government or even Pavel. We need to understand that the future belongs to every one of us, to one extent or another. Still, it belongs even to, I don't know, the newly born girl in, I don't know, Wuhan. So it really does. So we need to live in this knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you a lot. Anastasia sent me a message that he leave us, or you have a minute. Okay. On behalf of the Kruzhok Movement, I'm really very gratitude to you that you was today, and to this discussion too. It's really not so simple to tell about the future and the ways what and the some phenomena that we are surfaces when this future come to us, and the online education. It's one of the topic, I think, and there are many such topics as we know. I hope that you will be connect each other, and thank you to our viewers for the activity. Thank you for speakers, of course, and a special word of gratitude to our today's interpreters, Anita and Ksenia, because they did very great work. They did translation version of our discussion, and it's really hardworking, and thank you a lot for your work today. Pavel, Dmitry, and Frode, it's proposal to Aliya and Evgeny too. We will make articles for, after our discussion, make maybe interviews and some articles for scientific journal. So we invite you to this work and to read articles together, and it's very important for us, for our work in the Almanac of the Practices of the Future, and it's a part of our work with EduStelz too. So it's a good way to continue our dialogue in this year and the and further. Thank you a lot. Goodbye. Bye. See you
Thank you, everyone.
next week, next event. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.